Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Monday night, October the 18th, and I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and you can sit in the chat room if you like. The chat room is open, and I have a link in there to what I would like to talk about tonight. October is the national, it's the Domestic Violence and Abuse Month, National Awareness Month down in the States. And I just wanted to talk about I've got some awesome articles and whatnot and websites that are really helpful for people who want more information about domestic violence and abuse. And I just wanted to share some of this. I know I did some shows last winter that I actually focused for about, I forget how many shows I actually did on domestic violence and abuse and just everything to do with it. Even the situation that men go through suffering in domestic violence and abuse, because they are quite often victims and survivors in domestic violence and abuse situations, and the effects it has on children. But I'm just going to briefly touch on it here tonight. We have a half an hour, and I just wanted to bring out some more information and just keep talking about it. That's what we need to do. And for, anybody who's out there who's suffering in a domestic violence situation, and your life is being threatened, do whatever you can to get yourself to safety. Your life does matter. It does count. And, so many times people, are so beaten down in life and so mistreated for so long that they, I'm speaking as a survivor, you quite often believe what these other people, these abusers would say to you, or say to me, that we don't count, that we don't matter, and we do. Every single one of us has rights, human rights, right? And so that's what this is all about. Education and awareness and just knowing that, it's not an easy road to, I'm sure of it. I've heard lots of stories from people who have had, lots of issues trying to get out regarding red tape for services and trying to get help. But you know what? I know there's lots and lots of people who do get out. They do make it. It's a struggle, but it's your life is worth it. So whatever you have to do to keep yourself alive and to keep your children alive, if you have children in the home, that is what you have to do. And so we can't talk about this stuff enough. I just think that this is so important. Domestic violence affects so many people, and I don't have the stats here in front of me, the most recent stats or anything like that on how many people experience domestic violence and abuse. I just know firsthand, I know secondhand, what domestic violence and abuse is all about. And it's hard to be to grow up as a child watching your parents, or your caregivers fighting and abusing each other, right? It's very, very damaging, and even if the abuse isn't spilling over to the children, which wasn't the case in my case, but sometimes people say, oh, well, my partners and my behavior towards each other, the violent behavior and the abuse is not affecting the children because we're not abusing the children. Well, they are affected by it, and they will be affected by it, and you better believe it, guaranteed. So you want to make sure that, you're not in an abusive relationship, first of all. And then if your life is being threatened, you want to get help. You want to get out. You want to get help. So anybody who's listening to this, please make sure you get out and get some help, Reach out to someone, anyone. Crisis line, domestic violence shelter, domestic violence hotlines, family violence lines, just any kind of line, crisis telephone line. Make a phone call, Get some help if you can. Otherwise, if you can't make a phone call, tell somebody around you to make the call for you and get you some help. I'm serious. We cannot talk about this enough. So I'm not a professional counselor or therapist or anything like that. I don't have any certificates or anything like that, in these areas or any area. I am a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows, and mainly because I like to promote awareness and education, regarding the issues surrounding child abuse and domestic violence, sexual assault, you name it, abuses towards humanity, abuses, So you have to listen at your own discretion, right? The topics of abuse are very sensitive for a lot of people who have not heard too much about it and just don't know a whole lot about it. It's a very sensitive topic for those who have survived it, because quite often if we haven't talked about it and haven't dealt with these issues, it can be very triggering, and you have to know what's safe for you to listen to. So be sure you're safe when you're listening to any show like this, including my show, and realize that I'm just a private citizen paying to do my blog talk shows to bring this information out, because I study human rights. And I was going to school. I was actually studying in Calgary here at the University of I'm in between courses because I cannot afford to go, and so I'm still studying. I figured, hey, why stop studying just because I can't afford to take the courses? What I'll probably end up doing, hopefully, is testing out. Just go and take the test and get my degree. But the thing is you have to keep, if you're going to do something like this, you have to keep studying. And I thought, yeah, why not? I'll just bring out the information that I'm finding, that I find helpful for myself, right? And also that I think other people could benefit from. And so, I'm not a counselor or therapist, and you have to listen at your own discretion. Young people under the age of 18, I ask that you have someone listen to the show with you, because an adult, someone who's older, who you trust, and because young people, that's what I do. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. We are fighting to save children's lives, and you have to know how to keep yourself safe online. And you don't want to be in any chat room until you know how to protect yourself, right? And there's lots and lots of good information out there. Just type into your browser, internet safety, online safety for children. Any kind of internet safety website will have lots and lots of information on how to keep yourself safe. You just cannot take this serious enough. This is so serious. Children are dying at the hands of child sexual predators and pedophiles. If they're not dying, they're being assaulted, and their whole innocence and lives are stolen, really. Because of being sexually assaulted by these people. You want to make sure you keep yourself safe. And if you're a parent out there, you make sure that you get the information on how to keep your family safe, and know that absolutely, yes, there are hundreds of thousands of child sexual predators and pedophiles online in these chat rooms everywhere, on every social network, who are trying to get a hold of children. And if your children are unaware of how to keep themselves safe, they are very well setting themselves up to be victims of a child sexual predator or pedophile. You do not want that. And so make sure that you learn how to keep your family safe and how to keep yourself safe online, right? So important. So I wanted to look at, it's an article that it's information from the helpguide.org. This information is so good. I've read through this so many times and done a few shows on it already. But we can never talk about it enough. And every time I look at it, I learn something more. So I figure, hey, we'll just talk about it again. It's helpguide.org, http://helpguide.org. And you can just click on the links that you'll find there. There's a link on domestic violence, and there's links on child abuse. There's links on everything on to do with mental health on that, and abuse and just all kinds of topics and different information. Please check it out. It's a great website. I really like the information that's on this website. They don't mind people using their information as long as credit is given, to where it's due. And this article is from helpguide.org. So, signs of abuse and abusive relationships. This is the whole issue. A lot of people, men and women, and teens, don't even know they're in an abusive relationship. So many people, especially if there's not any real physical violence, but it's mainly psychological or emotional type, control or violence and abuse. Sometimes people think that the only type of abuse that exists really that matters is physical abuse, and that's just not true. Some of the other stuff is very, very, very damaging, psychological abuse, emotional abuse. And so sometimes people don't even realize that they're in a domestic violence situation. Maybe if they grew up being abused and then go right into a abusive relationship, sometimes you hear people say, oh, well, this is just how my partner treats me, without realizing that, hey, that's abuse. It's incredibly wrong. If it hurts you, then it's wrong. And so most often it's about control. It's almost actually always about control. They are, these people, these abusers who would abuse their partners are doing this for a reason. It's a choice that they make. And so this website here, helpguide.org, has some great information on understanding domestic violence and abuse. Recognizing abuse is the first step to getting help, they said here. They said domestic abuse often escalates from threats and verbal abuse to physical violence and even murder. And while physical injury may be the most obvious danger, the emotional and psychological consequences of domestic abuse are also severe. It says no one deserves this kind of pain, and your first step in breaking free is recognizing that your situation is abusive. Once you acknowledge the reality of the abusive situation, then you can get the help you need, it says. So signs of an abusive relationship, like what are signs of an abusive relationship? A lot of people don't even know what the signs and symptoms are of domestic violence and abuse, or abuse of any kind, child abuse and whatnot, which is mainly what I focus on. But there's lots and lots of signs of whether or not we're in an abusive relationship. And these would be like, do you feel afraid of your partner much of the time? Do you avoid certain topics out of fear or angering your partner? Do you feel that you can't do anything right for your partner? Do you believe that you deserve to be hurt or mistreated? I've actually heard people say that they deserved the abuse that they got. That's me talking. I've actually heard people say this to me, and I'd be like, no one deserves to be treated like that. No one deserves to be abused ever. So when somebody's abusing you, it's their choice. They're choosing to do it, and not that anyone deserves that. It's just that you happen to be the recipient of it, and it's really unfortunate, and it's not right at all. And these are basic human rights that we have, which is, human rights really encompass the right to life, the right to protection, the right to shelter, the right to food, to health care, government, the right to an abuse-free life, the right to practice our own religion, the right to our own genealogies and our own histories, the right to, the right to an education. I mean, we're talking, when somebody's holding people under their thumbs, whether it's a child or an adult, they're taking away their freedoms. They're taking away their human rights. And we all have human rights. And if we don't stand up for them, we'll lose them. So we have to stand up for our human rights, right? So these things, like if you feel afraid all the time of your partner, not sure, the certain things you can't talk about because it'll cause them to be angry, that you can't do anything right for your partner, that maybe they always are putting you down or, saying hurtful things, and that if they're physically abusing you, they might tell you that you deserved it. That's why they had to do that. There's all kinds of horrible stuff. Like they said, does your partner have a bad and unpredictable temper? Does your partner hurt you or threaten to kill you, threaten to take your children away or harm them, threaten to commit suicide if you leave, force you to have sex, destroy your belongings, this type of stuff? That's abuse. And see, a lot of people don't recognize that as abuse. They just think, oh, well, I just ended up in this relationship, and this is just the way it is, It's like, no, it's not the way that it should be. It's the way that it is, but it's not the way that it should be. No one deserves to be treated like that. And it's absolutely ridiculous when people think that they can get away with it, but they do. It says, does your partner humiliate or yell at you, criticize you, put you down, treat you so badly that you're embarrassed for your friends and family to see, ignore, or put down your opinions and accomplishments, blame you for his own abusive behavior, saying it's your fault, right? See you as a property or a sex object rather than a person. Does your partner get excessively jealous and possessive, control where you go, what you do, keep you from seeing your family and friends, limit your access to money, the phone, or the car, constantly check up on you? These are signs of an abusive relationship. If we can answer yes to any of those questions, we can pretty much figure that we're in an abusive relationship, and we need to do something to protect ourselves and to so that we're not suffering under that. Like, that's absolutely horrible. No one deserves to live like that. And I think it's just ridiculous that people put up with it year after year after year. And I know firsthand what that's like. Well, not firsthand, but secondhand, watching my mom do that, and watching how my mom stayed in this marriage until she died, and she could have got out. She could have got out at any time. She was free to go. She could have got out and got the kids out, and instead of that, just chose to stay in this abusive marriage with my dad because she was abused as a child, and she just figured that was her lot in life. And she used to always say, "That's just my lot in life. This is just life for me." She just accepted it. And that's really sad. She could have had a good life, right? It's unfortunate that people do that, but they do. And it says physical violence is just one more form of domestic violence, right? There's emotional, psychological abuse. There's sexual abuse, economic, financial abuse, right? There's all of these different aspects to domestic violence and abuse, right? And if they're doing all of those to you, that's just horrible. And if they're just even doing one of those things to you, that's horrible. See, it's really bad when people treat each other like this. Men and women are both abusers. You can't say there's more women abused than men. That's a fact. But the thing is they don't even know how many men are abused because men don't quite often report it because there's no help for them. There's no real services for them yet. They're trying to get services integrated in for men who have been battered by same-sex partners or by women. This can happen. And men don't deserve to be abused either, and women don't either. Everyone needs to quit abusing each other, right? That's the whole issue. it's the violent and abusive behavior is the abuser's choice, they said here, and I think this is really something that's so important for people to know. That I've talked to a few, psychotherapists and counselors and whatnot throughout the last year and a half, and I talked to one guy who actually used to work with, he used to work in the prisons, and he would be investigating, like talking to the actual people who were brought in, who were abusers. And he also worked on the other side of it as a paramedic and used to talk to the women who would be brought into the emergency rooms from, and he said in his lifetime, he said that it's totally true. Abuse is a choice, and these abusers that choose to do this to their partners, he said there's really, how do you change somebody who's so sick and so psychologically damaged themselves that they would do this to another person? He says it's all out of this horrible evilness in their heart. There's no other explanation for it. How can you do this to the person that you're supposed to love? And he says here's these women would come into these emergency rooms all battered and beaten up, and some of them half dead. And later on he would talk to them, and they would be like, he'd be asking them, what are you going to do? Are you going to press charges? Or are you going to? He wasn't a police officer. He'd just be talking to him, and they'd say, no, I'll just go back. So they were always going back. And he said he'd sometimes see the same ones coming back in on a regular basis. But see, if they won't press charges, if the person who's being abused won't press charges, and it just slips under the radar, then there's not much they can do. It's very, very sad. It's so sad. So many people lose their lives every year, due to the fact that their partners kill them. You know what I mean? And it's just not right. It's absolutely not right. It's totally. I would like to think that it's preventable, because I think that abuse is a choice. So I think we could always, everyone can take responsibility and accountability for their behavior. But sadly enough, there'll always be these people who just won't, because maybe they're mentally ill, possibly, have some mental issues going on, some psychological issues, that they just can't. You know what I mean? And this is just really unfortunate. And then there's those that just have a lot of hatred and evil in their hearts, and they just can't, they don't know any other way. That's just their heart. Their heart is black and evil, right? And that's unfortunate, because then the other person pays the price, and because they can't seem to get control of themselves, right? It's really sad. So violent and abusive behavior is the abuser's choice. And it says, despite what many people believe, domestic violence and abuse is not due to the abuser's loss of control over his behavior. In fact, abusive behavior and violence is a deliberate choice made by the abuser in order to control you. So it's not that they lose control. They know they're completely in control. They're going to control you, right? And that's what any abuser will do, and that's what abusers do to children. That's what most of the time, that's what it's all about. It's about control. And the same with domestic violence and abuse. It's the same thing. Abusers use a variety of tactics to manipulate you and exert their power. So there's dominance, humiliation, isolation, threats, intimidation, denial, and blame. And there's an abuse wheel on here, a power and control wheel. And these power and control wheels are really quite interesting to look at, because it shows the whole cycle of how these abusers go through these cycles and keep you continually in this cycle, right? And you after a while, it just becomes the norm. It's just the way it's just what happens in your world, and it's just not cool at all. You can see this one here, and also from the Texas Council on Family Violence. On their website, they have a whole bunch of these power and control wheels. They have, and these wheels, like relationship wheels, they have power and control, which is the same one that they've used here. And they have equality wheel, nonviolence, and whatnot. They have, which is what our lives should be like, right? And they have other wheels on there. So, that's kind of a cool website, too. And I don't have the actual web link for it, but it's Texas Council on Family Violence. And that's where you can get a bunch of these wheels to check it out. It's really quite interesting. But they were saying, like, dominance, humiliation, isolation, threats, intimidation, denial, and blame. That's what the abusers use to manipulate people and exert their power. So, they know what they're doing. You bet they do. And first it says dominance. Abusive individuals need to feel in charge of the relationships, in a relationship. So they will make decisions for you and the family, tell you what to do, and expect you to obey without question. And your abuser may treat you like a servant, child, or even as his possession. And I mean, as a secondhand victim of domestic violence, I know exactly what this is all about. And they quite often expect the children to live like that too, obviously. So domestic violence just spills over to the children as well, because the abuser, if the abuser is abusing the other partner, quite often they're abusing the children too. And they're, not always, but sometimes. And so, everyone in the family is just under this abuser's thumb, and that wasn't necessarily the case in my case, you know what I mean? But my case, both my parents were abusive towards each other, and they were both very much violent people. So they were both abusing the kids and each other, so it was just a big mess. But sometimes there's just one, and whoever this one is controls the whole thing. Kids, you name it, everything. Humiliation, it says, an abuser will do everything they can to make you feel bad about yourself or defective in some way, because that's how they humiliate you. They make you feel bad, right? And if you believe you're worthless and that you have no one that will want you, or you're less likely to leave. See, if they can get you to feel bad about yourself and feel that you're worthless, then they've got you, because you got nowhere to go. And, isolation is the next one. They make you dependent on them. They keep you away from your friends and family. They don't want you seeing anybody, because they want you to be isolated so that they can control what you're doing. And that way they have total control over you. If you have a big support network, it's a lot harder to control you if you have support from outside influences, whether it's your family or friends, neighbors. If you have people who are supporting you, then the abuser, of course, doesn't want that, because they want to have complete control. Threats. Abusers commonly use threats to keep their partners from leaving or to scare them into dropping charges. They may say that they'll threaten to hurt or kill you or your children, other family members, or even the pets. They may threaten to commit suicide. The false charges against rig false charges against you, or report you to child services. So they'll just threaten anything they can to get you to do what they want you to do, and that's really sad and pathetic, but it does happen. And you can't take a chance with this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? If someone is threatening your life, you better believe that if they're threatening your life, it's serious, and they could kill you. When somebody gets, you don't want to take the chance. Oh, she would never kill me, or oh, he would never kill me. He's just saying that. How do you know? Do you know he's just saying that? Or is this, how many people lose their lives every year? I mean, I don't even want to say every day. I mean, let's just say, every day, how many people lose their lives? How many people in domestic violence and abuse situations lose their lives to that abuser? Because they didn't take the threat seriously enough, or they didn't have a chance to get out. They might have been just kept down in a cellar or locked up or something, or just really no way out. This is serious. People are dying, and you don't want to be one of those people. I know the reason I guess I feel so passionate about this, and it upsets me, is because I know a lot of people who have been in domestic violence situations, not even just including my family, but because just my family is hugely affected by domestic violence and abuse, but I know other people whose lives were completely messed up because of domestic violence and abuse, and I actually lost a friend who was murdered by her partner in a domestic assault, and she was killed, and leaving behind 2 small boys. And we were not best friends, but the people that were left, after she was gone, the people that knew her, we were all sitting around going, how could we have not known what was going on? How could we have not known that she needed protection and that she needed out? Because she was always smiling. She never let on there was anything wrong in the relationship. You know what I mean? It's like she hid it very well. And this is very, very sad. And, she's gone, and her 2 boys will never have their mother. They were very young at the time when she was murdered, and so they will never. They might have these brief memories of her, and that's all they're going to have. And she was killed. And this is so sad. And this touches me, on a personal level in every way. I've been in a lot of domestic violence situations with my friends where I'd tried to save my friend, and I'd get beaten up because I was trying to save my friend. And one time I actually, because the same guy had beaten me up before and threatened my life, the next time I couldn't help my friend because I froze out of fear. Because, once you get attacked by somebody like that, had already grown up in an abusive home and knew what people could do to me. You know what I mean? But this guy was big and he was mean and he was on heavy duty drugs. So he was very powerful and overpowering. And, he was very abusive to my friend, who was my best friend, and he was bashing her head into a ceramic, like a bathroom wall. And because he had already beaten me up prior to, within about a couple of months before that, I froze. And it was not the first time. So, I mean, he had been kind of threatening me for a long time. And I kept sticking around my friend because I wanted to be able to protect her if I could. But because he had done what he did, I froze. And so I couldn't even help her. But luckily, thank God, there was another person with us who actually got him away from her. But the thing is, she didn't press charges. Did she press charges? No, she did not press charges. And, he was free to continue on until she made up her mind that she was not going to take that anymore for the safety and security of her baby. So you need to get yourself to safety. If you are suffering in this situation and you don't want your children to suffer, and if you have children and you don't want yourself to suffer, you know what I mean? It's not even funny. It's so scary. And I grew up in this, so I know what it's like. I used to try to save my mom, and end up getting shoved into the walls or just knocked down, pushed down, slapped down. It's scary, and no child should have to be watching the people that they love try to kill each other or, try to destroy each other, even if that they're not necessarily going to kill each other. They're threatening to kill each other, and they're cursing and beating on each other. And I mean, or just maybe one partner's doing that to the other one, right? And that's horrible, absolutely horrible to watch and witness. So it does affect the children. It will affect everyone in the family. And you have to make sure that you get yourself to safety. It's so important. One of my sisters was in a domestic violence situation as well, and her boyfriend, her husband was hitting her, and we knew it because she would show up to our house with sunglasses on, and we kept telling her to leave him. We were like, you have to leave him. He's not good for you. And she was like, well, it could change, and she was, fooling herself, right? And, she finally did get out, thank God. She divorced him, and I'm so happy. And so, it's not right. No one deserves to be abused like that. And okay, just here's on the other side, my brother-in-law was abused by my sister. My sister abused her husband. So, see, I've seen it on every single angle you can think of, But thank God, I have not been in it myself. So I'm a secondhand victim of domestic violence. So, the partners that I have chosen for myself in my lifetime, which is very few, but the couple that I actually can say, were my boyfriends or whatever, were slightly trying to be abusive, but I put a kibosh on it and I stopped it. And I nipped it in the bud, let me tell you that, because I said I will not live my life like this. I've already lived my life like this with other people, and I refuse to be treated like this. And so until you realize that you have rights, you have self-worth, you do count, you do matter, and you don't deserve to be abused, and put your foot down, the cycle of abuse will continue. And so, you don't want that. And I'm telling you, if anybody's listening to this show tonight and you're having a hard time, make sure that you get the information that you need to keep yourself safe. There's all kinds of websites out there. Just type into your browser domestic violence. There's a National Coalition Against Domestic Violence.org. That's a really good one. The NCADV.org. Domestic Violence, National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, NCADV.org, and they have phone numbers, they have, all kinds of links and whatnot. There's the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233, the National Sexual Assault Hotline, 1-800-656-4673, and the National Teen Dating Abuse Hotline at 1-866-331-9474. And make sure, that you get some help, right? Develop a safety plan. That's the best thing you can do. And you can get some great safety plans. You can get safety plans from www.domesticviolence.org and other places. Just type into your browser, Domestic Violence Safety Plan, and it will come up. And you'll find all kinds of great information out there on how to get yourself to safety and what to do to prepare ahead of time if you have time. And if you don't have time, get out, save your life. Make sure you do, because you do count, you do matter. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate you being here for all my shows. I really do. Have a great night. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. One child abuse survivor to another. Had to bump it up an hour, but we'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a great night, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.